Welcome to the Independent Rep Podcast, the podcast for medical sales reps, distributors, and growth-minded manufacturers who want to succeed in today's changing market. Hosted by John Wilson, former OR rep and now medical device recruiter, this show dives into what's really working out in the field, from deal making to distributor dynamics and everything in between. If you're building your career or your company in medtech, you're in the right place. All right, so today we have Nanni or Nanni?
Either depends on if you're in Italy or if you're in the U.S. So
Okay.
Nanni in Italy, Nanni in the U.S.
Okay. And you are in the New Jersey area. You have been an independent rep most of your career, and you've grown it into something pretty big. And that's why I'm excited to have you on today and talk about your experience. If we can just start off with kind of your story on how you got into medical device sales and kind of what brought you to where you are today. A little bit of an intro on that.
Sure. I'll try and condense it. And growing it into something big, it's never big enough, right? So, 30 years last September. So I almost right out of college in 2004, I got a job with a DePuy distributorship, selling joints for what was, a couple $100 a month at the time, pretty much. And just fell in love with the business, was kind of willing to not go the pharmaceutical route or what would be deemed a more stable kind of job path, because, what could be cooler than hanging out in the ORs, especially back then with the access we had. But so started, with DePuy. I think I converted after putting myself in debt for 2 years. I think I converted my first customer 2 years later, and kind of bought a ring for my wife, and we were off to the races. So always historically in the joint recon space, which for the originals was always hip, knee, and shoulder arthroplasty. So stayed in that space for almost 23 years with DePuy. They made some corporate changes at that time. Their decision, as many companies kind of went through this transition at one point or another, and always turning out to be the wrong decision. They made the decision that they would not kind of transition the distributorships to the next generation. So they were going to take back I think I can talk pretty clear about that and open about it, because
cut out the deal.
What's that?
So they just basically cut you out of taking over.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a power thing, right? And so when a corporation gets bigger, DePuy was the original orthopedic company out of Warsaw, Indiana. The tagline was always the first name in orthopedics. So it just was a very interesting industry that was not set up the way most organizations or industries were set up. So the decision to do that was certainly to kind of take back the power, I think. And they also felt like distributors were kind of making too much money. So what they didn't realize was when you have a distributorship, and I think at the time maybe we were like 50 million or something, but those organizations, first of all, are run on set budgets. And this is kind of important for people to understand the history of why these decisions are made, and they're usually poor decisions. So if you can imagine a corporation running a $50 million distributorship with a very fixed percentage, margin, right? So distributors weren't just salespeople. They were running 30, 40, 50, or even more member groups they were CEOs, they were CFOs, they were operations COOs. So being able to run an organization for a very set number, and that's all the company had to do was just kind of pay you that commission, and you were to run your business as you saw fit. No corporation can run their organization for that kind of numbers. What ended up happening, again, this is industry wide, so I am being specific about my situation, but what ends up happening as soon as a corporation comes in, they start spending money and they start adding overhead. And so I went to work for the corporation for about 8 months in total. And after 3 months, it was, having never been a corporate or an employed person, it was incredibly strangulating, very bureaucratic, very difficult to make the best decisions. And then you lose control. They keep just adding layers. And so they took what was a set budget and they probably ran it at another 6 or 7% above what we would run it. So it was just, we all knew it at the time. And I think, it's since gone back, because you can imagine if you take, say, 10 territories across the country and you add 7% of cost onto all of that, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, probably over time, I mean, 100 million, 200 million, whatever it is, of cost. So that's actually come back. But anyway,
Yeah. I've seen a lot
so
of
that,
manufacturers kind of struggle with that combination, when they go from a big distributor group and they're always trying to, it seems, just kind of move the chess pieces around to try and get, the best territory. They don't like to see all the profits go away to the distributors. So there was always this like back and forth there. And I've seen a lot of distributors, especially on the capital side, struggle with that part.
yeah, well, and this was 8 years ago. I think that was 2016. They took us direct, and I was gone by September of 17. But it was different then because things have changed even this last 8 years, where the independent distributor and all these companies, it was really just the big five companies at the time in joint recon. There were smaller companies existing and really good ones, but the distributor organizations were pretty universal across the country. So now things are different. So now that dynamic has changed, and the difficulty for organizations to decide if they want to go independent distributors, or how to access good, or what the value of those independent distributors are. That's all changed, and that wasn't around in 16, 17. It
Yeah. What caused that
really
change?
accelerated in the last 5 years.
What do you think caused that change?
Well, I think falling implant prices for sure. And without a doubt, the layers of fat that were built into these organizations over the years, and it wasn't their fault. It's just that, if you look at when I started in 94, that was really the birth of the baby boomer generation getting joint replacements and getting all of these elective procedures. So we just never felt any downturn. We didn't feel '08. We didn't feel any of these economic pressures. We just kept going up. And so the organizations, had these layers of marketing and R&D, and all of these people, as corporations do. Their job is just to keep adding people, right? And then until they cut people because they want to make the number look better. So it was solely built around, implant pricing. And when those pricing started to come down, and the transparency of pricing across the country, benchmarking implants, those margins got smaller. And so it became more challenging to do it.
Yeah.
So at the old model.
I definitely want to come back to your next steps after that point, but I want to backpedal because you mentioned something that's really interesting in this industry and still persists quite a bit. The 2 years, your first 2 years in, going into debt, just the hard commission based, if not commission only roles that we all started out with early on in the career. And kind of tell me about those 2 years for you from your perspective.
When you don't grow up with any money and you don't have a base salary, but you really believe like this is the coolest thing in the world. And again, we're going back to 94, brother. So there was no internet. There was no online anything. So when you told people you were in the OR, you almost stuck around because you didn't want to tell them that you failed.
Yeah.
Because everybody said, "Oh my God, you're in the OR." They just didn't know that I was living off a credit card. So yeah, I think, for me, it was the fear of failure. And then the motivation, we had better access then. So I could just, you could always get around and sell yourself, but it took 2 years. And being, just barely 24 and going up against industry vets, and it being such a clinically dependent business, it takes time because they got to trust you, right? They might give you little wins just because they like you and they're a nice kid. But those first 2 years are brutal. Were brutal for me and for a lot of guys and girls.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was, and then once you got one customer, especially when you look at it from what you were making, it's like, okay, wow, I could start actually planning the rest of my life.
Totally agree with that. Do you think that because access was easier back then, do you also think that there was more competition, or that's just been a constant?
So in our world, we were always kind of like, hey, he's a Depew guy, he's a Zimmer guy, he's a Halmetic guy at the time, or whatever. They had their loyalties, right? So you had to break those loyalties, and you really had to give them good reason. And back then, we were also selling, implant designs were constant. We still hadn't settled on what was the right combination of implants. Now I'll let anybody tell you, they're all pretty much clinically equal with certain nuances. I mean, I'm sure there's people who debate me on that, but in reality, I think most of the world right now and our world is recognizing that we're designing good implants at a high level of, where we need to be from a clinical outcomes perspective. So yeah, it's I mean, it's always nuanced, those to answer certain things, but the changes over the years have been significant. And we could literally linger around an OR lounge and just kind of meet people and chat and listen and observe and aware, and all the things I try and teach young reps now is like these things that be aware, pay attention, especially when you have access, when you are invited now, and when you have to be invited into these environments. Don't waste your time when you're sitting there, man. Just if you get lost in the scroll, you've just wasted your day, wasted that opportunity.
So, and I want to ask a lot about that too, on what you would recommend to reps today. But I want to stay focused a little bit on the early years of Al Nanni. When that first deal with that first doctor that you got, you were, I mean, 2 years. I think a lot of people just kind of trying to gain credibility, and then you get that one chance and you perform. Can you talk about maybe how you did get that first doctor on board and win that first deal?
I think that I could talk more about the value of how I coach and teach now, but just because it's so different, John, it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
but I will stay on that for a second. So at the time, just to give you a reference, like our company was the only one with a mobile bearing knee. And if you're not in knee replacements, there's still it was something we had to sell. It was differentiator, right? So you had to use the resources around you to get some of these individuals that you could sell to and actually sell something different. After that, it was more, did somebody mess up, or you just, did you get to have a better relationship with somebody? Did you grind it out and just somebody you found that, whether it was a unicorn or just somebody who was willing to help you a little bit along the way and you were able to spread that out? It's hard to translate from where we were because
Yeah.
everything was just different then.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change, how they do it today. How we do it today is far more, um, I don't even know if I'd say it's difficult. It's just you have more options to kind of figure out how to differentiate your product or your approach. But certainly it's all access. Access is the biggest challenge for any new rep. You don't have access. You're what do you do in your day?
Yeah. So now you've transitioned into your company. When you left DePuy after those, that year, let's say, tell me about, did you start immediately what became Pivot, or tell me that kind of evolution?
Yeah, that's where I think, a lot of people that I've talked to over the years say, Al, I'm just not a risk taker. I'm not willing to take that risk. I'm just going to stay and grind it out and take what is safe. But my response to that, and this gets into like this whole dynamic of like colleges and everybody teaching entrepreneurialism and all this stuff. We see Shark Tank and every young kid wants to go in an entrepreneur, and I just laugh at them. And I'm like, okay, what's that mean? And I think it's you have to have a high level of expertise to do in a space. So the reason why I made the decision to leave, it was not reckless, it was calculated. And it was like, okay, I know this space really well. I know what's being taken away from me, and I know what my abilities will be moving forward to affect new business. And usually it's like the rate limiter is like to get new business is the corporate hand involved in every decision. So my decision to do it was, okay, what's going to be the challenges? How am I going to differentiate myself? And going back to what I said earlier, the strategy was simple. It was like, hey, I can create an organization that keeps minimum overhead and be a better financial partner. Again, going also back to we realized that the implants in our world are very commoditized. They all look alike. You can't even tell some of these systems from the other. So recognizing that dynamic, and then the migration to the surgery center, I was blessed to be in New Jersey with like kind of a pioneering surgeon who was way ahead of the game in transitioning his total joint practice into the outpatient setting. So I viewed it as like there's going to be fertile ground for me to then the challenges of the big corporations of not being able to control cost, that are going to have to keep implants at a certain level. And so I kind of created a solution around Pivot that we were going to launch that way. I had to spend the first year working for a smaller company, which turned also out to be a blessing. Some of my friends were running a smaller organization. So I was like their VP of sales, which I was terrible at. I was just not built to be, spreadsheets and formulas and all that. Like I wasn't built for it. So, but that gave me an invaluable education and expanded my network and contacts that go not just nationally, but actually globally. Because I spent about a year plus doing that VP of sales for an outside US company that was based out of Florida for the US plant.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back in 18 is when I got did my non-compete is when I really launched Pivot as a solution-based traditional company, but just hopefully answering a lot of or being able to provide a lot of solutions for where the challenges of the industry were going.
And you saw those challenges. So what list some of those that you saw that you've kind of created Pivot based on your experience and expertise? You're like, this is where the market's going and this is where I'm going to put myself.
Well, it was really the migration right to the surgery center, and that was even stagnated because that Pennsylvania. I'm in the greater Philadelphia market, so basically it's a 3-state kind of triangle between the greater Philly market, New Jersey, and Delaware. And everybody had different rules for their surgery center. Pennsylvania just opened like in the last 2 years, which was just bizarre.
Wow.
That it took so long for them to migrate the elective procedures, meaning
Yeah.
like the joint replacement, the larger procedures. So it solely was based on that dynamic that I knew I could have really good companies in my portfolio, expand across service lines. So I knew I could minimize sales reps in and out. I could cross over, have really good reps, but managing multiple service lines, say like not just joint recon, but small trauma, surgery center based trauma, and really be very transparent financially and maximize their revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I can create an organization that can increase their EBITDA and then likewise their enterprise value of their surgery center by maximizing their profitability on their procedures. So that's what I built the company around. We still do the big revisions and stuff in hospitals, and we go back and forth. Didn't work out like I thought it was. I thought I had these solutions. So John, make no bones about it. It's been the roughest 8 years of my entire life, and COVID didn't help.
Yeah.
But nobody, like, even though I thought I had the solution and I was a known entity in the market, it didn't matter. I mean, some people got it, some people didn't, but it wasn't some open the doors and success story by any means. Still is.
Right. I mean, seeing the opportunity and building a company around that, basically usually means you see a problem and there's usually someone else that also sees that problem or a few people. And you have in this business, very experienced competition that is usually just as good and kind of going at the same problem. Where you've seen success and actually, so tell me about maybe a story or if you can, an anecdote about maybe one of the challenges that you found going into the ASC market as you have and focusing on that and how you kind of overcame or got started really delivering your services.
Yeah. Well, when I launched Pivot, I put together a Pivot ASC solution. Now, they're everywhere. Everybody's got their ASC solution, right? Um, I I recognized that like that was going to be the tip of the spear in my organization, and the challenges with that became, and it's morphing. And this is for we kind of talk about this all the time on LinkedIn with this dynamic. But the challenges were, one, people weren't getting it, or they weren't trusting that they were going to have the right service, or younger surgeons wanted everything available, and then the contracting became an issue. Like the fallback for surgery centers is just for their management and leadership to go into these big deals with big companies that are always, I won't put a blanket statement out there because I don't know if it'll be fair across the board, but that really are veiled a bit, and actually they're not saving money. It's just locking them into long-term contracts. So that dynamic was always a challenge. And then more recently, it's been the surgery center management companies that are taking over, and the consolidation of hospitals, purchasing surgery centers, or the battle with HOPDs, which is the hospital outpatient departments. And I mean, there's just a lot of challenges. Nothing's a turnkey, man.
Kind of the
I
same
just keep searching for unicorns. That's what I say. I just keep searching for unicorns.
That's tough. I mean, it's the same problem. The hospital market you saw change from the 90s and the consolidation and the kind of the decision making leaving the surgeons and going to these management groups that are, in another state. Now it seems like those same hospitals are kind of buying into these ASCs and taking over and then adding like you said, those service contracts that are taking away the business from these smaller manufacturers.
Yeah, or they're adding technology. I mean, the only solutions right now that companies are trying to provide, and again, this is not anybody who follows me or talks to me or watches what I post. I mean, the only solutions that these companies are bringing is adding technology because implants, you cannot get in front of anybody and argue clinical advantages with in my world
Hmm.
in hip and knee primarily. I think shoulders are definitely, we've got some definitely outliers of really good stuff, but so it's just technology that they're offering robotics and things that in my mind is they have never been proven clinically across the board to be better, and it's just a way to sell a big capital and offset it with implant usage, keep
Yeah.
prices up. I mean, everybody knows this isn't a secret. There's a whole army of us out there screaming about this. So they're the challenges when somebody wants a robot, and then the only way they can pay for a robot if it's a surgeon-owned facility is to offset it with implant costs.
Okay. Yeah. And so how what kind of value when you're bringing in a smaller manufacturer and you're making those clinical cases or just the service cases based on your experience and your credibility of, showing up on time every time. Is that the playbook? Like how do you outperform some of those? Do you just lose some business and you're like, all right, I'll just keep going where I can? Or have you been able to beat out some of those service contracts or win your case against some of these tougher markets?
Actually, John, it's price, unfortunately, price first.
Hmm.
If the company has solutions that are really beneficial, I'm sticking with the surgery centers right now
Yeah.
because hospitals are what they are. That's just a traditional thing. If you can get them on that surgery center, you can get them in the hospital if they'll allow you to do business there. It's way more fertile ground in the ASCs, regardless of a hospital is involved or not. It's it's a dynamic that pricing, simplifying their world. If they need lower prices, just coming to me making one phone call to these really good companies. Some have been around 30, 40 years, man. So it's not like they just weren't as well known because their distribution or sales force wasn't as sophisticated. It was kind of like grinding it out in little pockets, depending on where you were geographically. But when they can come to me with a problem and I can fix it very quickly. Or if it's like, hey guys, our reimbursement got lowered. I need you to come down to this. If I have to make the decision and we make a little less, so be it. But it's my decision. And it's my decision with the partnership of the company. That is the number one, definitely the best or the most valuable benefit to doing business with smaller organizations is that dynamic. You don't have to meet with three, finance people, area vice presidents, worry about benchmarking, pricing, all that stuff for the most part. So that's our value. If I have to narrow it down, all things equal, it's our ability to be very good partners and kind of stewards of their financial success.
Right. Just and then being able to be that flexible and nimble on your side, what allows you to do that with, because you have an organization yourself that you're taking care of. Because is it finding more products for your reps to kind of go out there and represent and just build more business and kind of like a wider portfolio of products versus some of these other reps that are W-2 that are confined to their one, small offering?
So there's definitely really good things that we analyze what we want to get involved with on the distribution side. Independent distribution is very costly for smaller companies. It's also I'm very confident that this is an accurate statement, but most smaller companies will tell you anywhere from 15 to 20% of their distributors that they spend are actually bringing value to them. Most of it is chasing, the organizations that aren't successful. So in my other world, it's I counsel or consult with that dynamic on what a company wants to choose to do. But I very much admit, like we have really good products within Pivot that we're underperforming. We're not doing a great job for really good people. It's just the dynamic of my world. We're trying to do the best we can, but we do have the differentiators where you really have a great product. An easy one for me to say is like a company like BodyCat. So we take care of BodyCat. It's this really good technology. It's better than what's out there. It's priced the same. It's better for the surgeon. It's more efficient. It's a more accurate system. It's got all of the benefits to go in, and that can be like a Trojan horse to get in, right? So that's your one you can go to and sell and have a conversation. If you're a rep and you can find those products that you can just open up conversations about because it's not a commodity and it's actually better in so many ways as long as you're not crazy on the cost, because there's always going to be a balance between, hey, are we good enough? Because this is just too expensive. So you got to be careful of that, right? But when you have a company that is just clear a benefit, that's your Trojan horse in. So we add those products. We've got like a core 4 or 5 products we try and focus in on, other than our hardware, which is, meaning like the 80% cases, joint replacements, lower extremity, and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
you can get those products, and most distributors recognize that. They say, "Oh, I want this one because not just because it's differentiating and it'll make me some money, but also that it could get me in that door, and then I'm an invited guest, and then I can go and see what's going on, and
Yeah.
that'll expand."
And it's that's part of the value of a surgeon speaking to their distributor relationships is, what's new out there that you found. So you find those body cap products that kind of are something new that they can see the clear benefit on.
Yeah.
With reps, with when you're hiring reps, when you're filling in geography, how many reps right now do you guys have?
So there's in total of 12 of us in the organization. We do have a number of things that don't work for us that are kind of subcontractors with us, but our core organization is 12 of us.
And how do you, so you guys, you said you get together, you look at products, you make a decision based on, is this something that we can do? Is this something that we want? Where, can you walk me through that process with those guys, with your team, and kind of, the experience level of each member as they kind of add their opinion to those products?
Well, because we're often hiring younger, from entry level to just a couple years in. We do, myself, my VP of sales, Ryan, and maybe 1 or 2 other people that we have in our organization. We're the subject matter experts. We're the ones with our lens is different. We can look at something and coach that up. So we're the decision makers on that, because we don't need to put it out to like the whole group to say like, hey guys, what do you think we can do with this? We know what we can do with it. From there, we just coach them up, right? We just say, okay, this is how you're going to do it. We're going to help get that in, and then go. And that's how we look at it. So our evaluation process, and this could just be one, a single distributor who just makes that call because they know the space so well, right? The challenge is coaching the lens and coaching the perspective on younger reps to just try and say like, you gotta, this is your product. Like, why are you not out there talking to everybody about this? But to answer your question, we keep it tight. There's only a couple of us who make that decision because of our history.
And what's your footprint geographically? Is it really the tri-state area? Is that where you're focused on?
So me and myself in particular, and there's other distributors like me out there as well. I say like, here's my regional distribution. This is one I can, when we talk to the value of a manufacturer, and they're like, hey, we're not going to, what area do you want? And most of the smaller manufacturers now give non-exclusive territories, which I agree with, because you get a lot of bad actors out there who just looking to claim jump and just say, oh, well, just give me the region. And that it's like, it's got to be like a 98% fail when you give up that kind of territory.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of look at it and say, okay, here's where I can realistically cover without BSing you. I go, say 2 hours outside of Philadelphia and create a band around that. And then I say, even in New Jersey, we're kind of split. We're very strong in the 2/3 lower of New Jersey. I like to keep most of my New Jersey business in Eagles country, not Giants country. So Jersey's split. Jersey's New York and Philly. So we got 2 markets. And then Delaware is an anomaly in itself. It's just a small state that does a ton of business. But that's what I say. So I say regionally, here's where I can help.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, this is where we're going to be selling all the time. But you can include more area because we can get there. We can cover. We can manage that area for you. And then I always just tell manufacturers, like, listen, if you got to take it from me, just take it from me, because that's fine. I'm not going to handcuff you to that area.
Yeah, so that's an interesting. There's probably a lot of distributors that'll listen to this and they're going to say, "Well, I only want exclusive territory, and I'm not going to deal with a manufacturer if they aren't going to give me like my own geography and let me run with it for a year." So I think that speaks of like the confidence that you have in your team and what you guys do to say, "Yeah, just give me a non-exclusive contract."
Yeah, well, I would say to any distributor, especially ones that are jumping in, if you land grab and overpromise, all you are is stressed. You are avoiding those that you are accountable to. You're avoiding their calls. You don't want to take their calls because you're underperforming. you just biting off literally more than you can chew could be, that statement could be no more relevant in our industry and that dynamic than anywhere. Like you bite off too much. Cannot, this business is way too clinically dependent. And then you're just screwing like the guy or the girl who set you up and had confidence in you because you bullshitted them. You're like, well, I can take this area. And it's like, you're just making their lives difficult. They got to go home. They got somebody to answer to. And you promise something that you can't deliver. And it's just not fair.
Yeah. That's a perspective I think that just speaks of your experience in the market, because that's the first thing that most young distributors want to do is they just want to land grab, like you said. So that's pretty, the cost of that stress that you just put yourself, that you just bought if you got that agreement is yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate statement.
I mean, you get 60 days, 90 days, and you're not doing anything, and then you're starting to take calls, and you're like, oh crap,
or
and it's just like I should have never done it. It just doesn't make sense, and it really, it just isn't fair to the people. And then uh, you hear about distributors complaining, oh, that guy's a pain in my ass, he's always calling. I'm like, well, what did you promise him? Like, is it his fault or her fault that they've got somebody to answer to? Like, I can't stand when people do that. So that's just me. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. It's never going to work out.
That's a good lesson. It's probably worth it, anyone listening to this right now. As you grow, what's next what are you excited about for Pivot?
Well, I think we're on a steady growth. I think we've got one of our companies, and I get agnostic when I talk about our companies, like the core companies, just because um, it's just nuance. People out there who are listening and know it will understand. But when you are a smaller organization, you more than likely cannot have one manufacturer in the service line. There's too many challenges they face, especially post-COVID, with supply chain and staffing of their own organizations. You cannot leave yourself clinically short or with a bag that may look full but has air pockets all over it because the company can't supply you what you need. So you need to have multiple manufacturers. You just got to balance it out to try and show value to those manufacturers to be an acceptable partner, whatever those sales. So we're really set with our manufacturers, and I'm very happy with that. I think we are now in the changes in healthcare that those are staying independent. Our business model is way more attractive now than it was before, because what's happening is the implant levels prices are falling to a critical level, and the larger companies are either hitting their reps or doing whatever they can to get sticky within these organizations and lock them into bigger contracts. So I'm excited that I think this next wave for us, based on this dynamic, we will be more relevant, having stuck around now and survived, a lot of difficult times. Going on 8 years. I'm excited about that, and I'm also excited about the other organization I started that we won't go too much into. But for a plug, my business development company is what's made, because that's where we've put together a group of subject matter experts that we're doing some really cool stuff that we're actually going to be in control of versus somebody else being in control of.
Yeah, I'm gonna have you come back for a whole conversation on just that one, I think, down the
Yeah.
road.
Well, when I'm ready, when I do what I'm going to do over the summer, I'll definitely come back and chat to you. I'm not ready to release it, but I'm excited about that. But
I was gonna let you go. We were gonna like taper off. I just thought of this really good question. So robots, which are some of the bigger manufacturers' way of kind of staying sticky with those implants. Do you see? There's also a lot of robot companies out there that would, I think, be looking for distributor groups to take them into these ASCs. Have you seen that trend start, or are you kind of thinking along the same lines, or am I just way off?
No, you're not way off. I mean, it's a robot wars right now, man.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most incredible things, if you weren't in the total joint space, was, not to put a plug for Stryker, but everybody's chasing Mako in my world, right? They've been around longer. They're just buttoned up, right? As much as it pains me to say, but the realities of certain things is everybody's kind of chasing that market leader. Recent paper came out where, there are people and there are cases that the robot helps, but nobody in all of this time, even Stryker, Mako, not one peer-reviewed article that has shown that outcomes are better with a robot than not. So I'm always questioning out loud, like, what are we doing here? We're indoctrinating younger talent and they're training surgeons, where surgeons are coming out of their fellowships never having done what we call a manual joint replacement, right? So robots are a whole nother topic we could have a pro and con on, but technology sells and they market it to patients and, I don't know, man. It also helps in some regard with my model because we do have access to a robotic company. We have one of our manufacturing partners has one, but we also has great technology. I love technology it's going to bring efficiency. It's going to lower cost and at times even drive revenue because you'll be able to do more cases.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever see robotic right now. I shouldn't say ever. They will get, there's some really cool stuff getting designed out there that I think are 3-5 years away, handheld stuff and different things that'll be kind of cool. But right now,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to go in and ask for capital purchase and kind of go against my kind of core values within this industry.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of the state of robots right now. All right, so with the last kind of question, you're so advanced. I would really like to get advice for some distributors that are still they've been doing business for a while. Let's say they're trying to think about a way to grow their distributorship, either in ortho or in another service line, completely different. Any advice for those guys who are not figuring out how to get maybe out of the car on the daily basis, they're still carrying their bag, they have maybe 1-2 assistants. How do you scale your distributorship?
Competitive rep hires. But that's even got to be aligned because those competitive reps are scared about access. Are those vendor limiting contracts in hospitals just going, no matter if their surgeon, their loyal surgeon's going to want to move with them? Are they going to be able to do cases? Because it's a whole nother topic of vendor limiting and restricted trade and all that other stuff related to these contracts. But so the easiest way is competitive rep hires. But I will tell you, having actively trying it, man, you got to line things up for them because it's always been the formula that if somebody has $4 million in business, they're probably going to bring $1.5 million, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just the dynamic of our business. So you have to line things up for those reps. If you're an ego and just going to say, listen, this is how I did it and this is how you're going to have to do it. Like stop walking up, 5 miles in snow to get to school. Like that's done. Like if you want their value, you've got to line things up. And I would also say, build your organization around supporting them and structure because they're going to be coming from a very structured environment and independent distribution. If you're just a 1-2 person shop, you got to find that rare person who's been in this business a long time and doesn't care. But if you're going for that competitive rep, maybe under 10 years, that is around structure, I tell you that, button up your organization and make them feel like they're not just on an island.
Okay. I have so many follow-up questions for you, but we're going to have to do this another time.
Yeah, no problem.
This has been great, Al, so I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, John. My pleasure, buddy. Good luck to you, pal.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Independent Rep Podcast. If you got value from today's episode, please follow, share, and leave a review. To connect with John or learn more about succeeding in medical device sales, visit theindependentrep.com. Until next time, keep grinding, keep learning, and stay independent.